everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. September is here, and some Oklahoma wheat producers will be in their fields soon, planting early wheat varieties. To get us started, here's SUNUP's Dave Deacon and our Extension small grain specialist, Dr. Amanda Silva.
Here we are in September, and I cannot believe that it's almost time to start planting wheat. Now, what are some of the things that producers need to be thinking about as we do move into wheat planting season?
Yeah, I can't believe either. I mean, it has gone so fast. Right. So one of the things that maybe producers should keep in mind is to get some soil tests, to get those results and use that to base their information, to know what the plant nutrient available are in their cropland, and avoid maybe under fertilization, over fertilization, and reduce money with input costs.
It's so tempting right now. I mean, parts of the state have seen the moisture. It's starting to cool off, relatively speaking, and those producers are kind of thinking about, maybe it's time to go ahead and start planting the early varieties. What's your advice for those producers that do see this as maybe a potential opportunity?
Yeah, I would say maybe not rush out, just wait a little bit. So I've been looking at the Mesonet soil temperature, and we are still relatively warm. Soils are still warm. And we know that some varieties, they have a sensitivity to germination in hot soils. So yeah, just be aware of that. Our previous research has shown that mid-September is a good time for producers to plant dual-purpose wheat. So that's a good timing. It's generally speaking, so between September 10th, September 20th, for grain only, maybe 2-3 weeks after that. So let's say mid-October, it's a good timing. So I think those are good things to keep in mind, that some varieties are sensitive to germination in hot soils, and in planting too early may reduce crop establishment and fall forage production.
One of the big issues producers may have had in the past seasons would be that volunteer wheat as they move into the season. What are some things that producers should do with that? Yeah,
so we haven't seen many issues this year with volunteer wheat because it's been really dry. Right. But for people that are seeing, it's a good practice to control it, to go ahead and control it. So volunteer wheat can be controlled with herbicide, with tillage. And the biggest issue with that, volunteer wheat can host the wheat crop mites that transmit wheat viruses, diseases. So it's a good idea to go ahead and control if you're seeing it, and just keep in mind that volunteer wheat needs to be dead for about 2 weeks before planting. Some varieties have resistance to with streak mosaic, with crop mites, but it's very limited. So we don't have many varieties with resistance to that. So it's a good idea to go ahead and control it, because some varieties that have resistance, they are limited to certain areas. I think most of them are in the panhandle. Okay. So it's a good practice to go ahead and control it, not only for your field, but also for your neighbor's field. Okay,
thank you very much, Dr. Amanda Silva, small grain specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And for a link to that, you can go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Well, as Amanda and Dave were talking earlier, it is hard to believe that it's almost time to start thinking about planting wheat, but Misha, it's also time to start thinking about weed control.
Always, yeah. So it's a good rule of thumb that the very first plant that utilizes the resources in a field, water, nutrients, light, that's the one that's going to be the most competitive. So we want our crops to have that competitive edge over our weeds. And one of the first things we're thinking about in fallow fields, whether or not we till or we're in no-till, is we want to start clean. If you're in a limited tillage environment, or maybe you're primarily no-till, of course you want to start with some kind of good burn down option. Many of our summer annuals that we see here, they're starting to finish their life cycle, and as we start to drop temperatures, which we're getting a little bit of experiencing this week, we're going to see our winter annuals come up. And if tillage is an option, I think it's something that should be utilized. We have several weeds. Horseweed or mare's tail is a great example of a weed that responds well to tillage.
We talked about pre-planting, but what about pre-emergence weed control? What are some things that producers need to think about there?
Great question. If you have grasses, which if you've been planting wheat, you probably have grassy weeds. If you are planting wheat that you are thinking about taking off the field as grain, we have several delayed pre-emergence herbicides that can go out. What does that mean, delayed pre? They go out shortly after planting. Some of those products include Zidua, Anthem Flex, and Axiom. The delayed pre-emergence timing is a little bit unique. So a true pre-emergence is going out right after planting. Our delayed pre goes out, if you look at the label, it says around 80% germ to spike. 80% germ, that's pretty hard to quantify. Spike, we can see it right when the wheat has just come out of the ground. That would be the time that we want to make these delayed pre applications, and we need to be strategic that a rain is coming because they have to get incorporated into our soil profile. But when all those things work together, they are extremely effective.
You know, in regards to summer crops, we're about to get that time towards the harvest, and those fields, a lot of fields will go fallow. I'm wondering, is there anything, is that a good time for, next summer to start after harvest and letting those fields go fallow, to start managing those fields for weeds, maybe relatively soon to ensure a better crop next summer? Yeah,
any plant that we're gonna leave in the field that could have a potential seed rain is something we're gonna wanna control. Some of our pigweeds, female plants, can produce over 500,000 seeds for one plant. So fallow fields are a great time that we can implement non-selective herbicides like paraquat or glyphosate and start planning for whatever our next rotation is. If we use something that has a residual, just be looking at the plant back restrictions for your next crop.
All righty, Misha. Misha Manuchehri, Weed Systems Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like some more information that Misha talked about, go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, Wes Lee with your Mesonet weather report. What great weather we got to experience for the first week of September. Fall-like temperatures and some much-needed rain for some of the driest parts of the state. As of Thursday morning, the 5-day rain totals came in with some impressive numbers, with rain chances continuing through the week. The Byers Station topped the list with almost 9 inches of rain. Most of this fell on September 1st with some incredibly hard downpours. Rainfall rates peaked at Byers with 4.68 inches per hour, according to Mesonet data. Other areas in south central and southeastern counties also received 6 to 8 inches of water, as indicated by the orange and red colors on this map. Rain in the southwest, such as the 2.22 inches at Altus, will help out tremendously with dryland cotton crops in those areas. Soil moisture across the southern half of the state showed some great improvement for the week. The green colors on this 10-inch fractional water index map from Wednesday highlight the improving areas. The brown areas show the few areas that missed the rains and experienced additional drying. Wet conditions may continue for the state at least for a while longer. The National Weather Service forecasts for the upcoming week show a lot of green, indicating a higher than normal chance of rain. Now here is Gary with the latest drought map.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, with all the rain that Wes had mentioned we got over the past week, we definitely should have had some changes on the drought monitor map. Let's take a look at the newest map and see where we are. Well, as you can see, we have eliminated almost all of the dry weather across the eastern half, actually eastern 2/3 of the state. We still have that persistent drought area across southwest Oklahoma, up into the northwest, and in the western panhandle. So while we have had some improvements, that drought is still there. We have had a long period of lack of precipitation in that region, so we want to wait maybe another week, see if we get another reinforcing rainfall event before we start to improve it. As Wes mentioned, we have increased odds of above normal precipitation next week, but we also see a big pattern change with a lot of cooler weather coming down. This is the same outlook for next week from the Climate Prediction Center for temperature, and we see greatly increased odds of below normal temperatures for next week, starting in midweek really, as that front starts to come through and we start to get some more of that Canadian air down into the southern plains. Now for the Climate Prediction Center's drought outlook for September, they perceive the western parts of the state to see drought relief by the end of the month. However, you go out into the Panhandle, they expect that drought to persist or intensify. Now that area in southwest Oklahoma, they see drought removal in some areas and improvement in other areas. So there might still be some drought left according to their forecast or outlook, but there will still be some drought there and possibly removal in that region. So with the previous week, we really saw some decent rainfalls, had a chance to eradicate a lot of that drought, but now we need some reinforcing rainfall to really get the eraser out. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time for the Mesonet Weather Report.
Dr. Derrell Peel, our livestock marketing specialist, joins us now. Derrell, we've turned the calendar page to September. A lot of producers thinking about planting some wheat for grazing. How's the situation looking heading into fall?
Well, obviously the first challenge always is to get the wheat established, get that pasture started. Early planting wheat has a number of challenges from a production standpoint, but you know, it varies on moisture conditions, and we've gotten some recent rains which I think will help that in some cases. The one thing that is clearly better this year is that we've got fairly cool soils, and so we don't have some of the germination questions that we sometimes do with really hot soils going into September.
How about the market side of things? What is that looking like in terms of wheat pasture and forage for grazing?
You bet. You know, if you look at feeder cattle markets right now, I like to look at the set of prices across weights. You know, our stocker enterprise is going to start with a lighter weight animal, put some weight on it, and sell it at a heavier weight. And so you can calculate, given prices at any point in time, the value of gain between a beginning weight and an ending weight. And when I do that right now, it looks somewhat encouraging. The value of gain across a number of different weights would suggest that the value of gain right now is around 90 cents to $1 a pound, that's sort of the gross margin, if you will. That's not profit, but that's where you start from to figure out whether there is profit potential in these stockers.
What about budgets in terms of winter grazing? What should we plan for?
You bet. If you look at the budgets right now, then you're going to take that sort of value of gain idea, but then build in the time concept between we're going to buy them sooner and we're going to sell them later. Right now, you know, we're probably not looking at buying these calves quite yet. Some producers may start buying before too long, but if we're buying in, say, October, we're going to run them until early March. The preliminary budgets that I've done right now based on you know, seasonal price patterns and what the futures market is telling us would suggest that there's actually some profit potential in there. It's going to depend on a number of factors, including what size animals we start with, what the price of those animals are, what the daily gain is, what the cost of wheat pasture is. All of those assumptions go into that, but there looks to be some potential right now.
With all that in mind and heading into fall, what is your guidance for wheat stocker producers?
Well, I guess my guidance always is to start sooner, start before you buy some animals, do a little bit of pencil work to try to figure out, based on the market situation right now, what kind of animals we should be buying, what size, you know, maybe what gender, whether steers or heifers look to work better, and figure out kind of what our marketing and risk management plans are going to be in addition to the production plan. So, you know, if the futures market offers an opportunity to lock in a margin, then we need to act on that if that's something that we want to take advantage of.
Look at all angles.
Absolutely.
All righty, Derrell, thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
Last week on the Cow-Calf Corner, we visited with you about the 3 stages of calving. And as you recall, stage 2 begins when the water bag or the baby feet first appear and end when the calf is completely delivered on the ground. One of the things that will give us some problems during stage 2 occurs only about 1.6% of the time, according to research coming out of Montana, and that's the backwards calf. The calf that, instead of coming head and front feet first, is coming with the back feet coming out first. understanding the anatomy of the cow and the calf when we're working with that backwards calf is extremely important to having a successful outcome. We realize that the hips are going to be the first source of blockage as we're bringing that backwards calf out. The hips will be widest, of course, across the width of the hips. The largest dimension of the pelvic opening of the mama cow is the vertical dimension. Remember that pelvic opening is oval shaped, it's not round. And so we want to match up the widest part of the hips with the largest dimension or the vertical dimension of that pelvic opening by creating about a quarter turn rotation as we're trying to bring that calf out through that pelvic opening. Now this is where it really becomes important that we understand timing. Once those hips have cleared that pelvic opening and we can see the baby calf's tail head, then he's in a situation where probably the umbilical cord that is his lifeline to his mother is being pinched off right over the pelvic rim or the pelvic bone. Once that umbilical cord is completely pinched off, we've got only 4 minutes to get that calf out on the ground and started breathing. Because you want to remember, his head and nostrils are still inside in fluid to where he can't get any air until we get him completely out on the ground. So one of the things that I would really suggest is that if you find that you've got a cow or a heifer and you examine her and you've got a backwards calf coming, call and get whatever help you have on hand before you start to pull, so that once you're ready to get those hips through that pelvic opening, then both of you can be there to help pull that calf completely out, to get him on the ground and get that calf started breathing as soon as possible to get the best chance of an outcome. And of course you want to remember that anytime you are working with a cow or a heifer at calving time and you reach in there and you find something that you don't think you can handle easily in the first few minutes, then call for help. Get your local veterinarian involved. Perhaps you'll need to take the cow to the clinic to make sure that we get that calf delivered as easily as possible. So I think if you'll keep that rule in mind, you can save just a few more calves and have a little better bottom line. One more idea that I have for you is to go to the SUNUP website. That's sunup.okstate.edu. We've got a link there to a publication that the late Dr. Dave Sparks and I put out several years ago. It's E-1006, Calving Time Management for Beef Cows and Heifers. I think an excellent bulletin to help you understand what's going on with cows and heifers at calving time. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
County fairs are a rite of passage this time of year, but because of the pandemic, adaptability is definitely on exhibit this year. Here's SUNUP's Curtis Hare in Pontotoc County.
In a normal year, hundreds of trailers, circus rides, and thousands of people are filling up the Pontotoc County Fairgrounds. But 2020 ain't normal.
This would have been our 104th fair, and in 104 years, it's not happened.
Like many events across the state, the coronavirus pandemic has upended the yearly Oklahoma fairs. Organizers have had to make some difficult decisions on whether to have their fairs at all. Both Oklahoma and Tulsa State fairs nixed their stapled events. For Pontotoc County Extension Director Jana Kelly, the decision to cancel the fair was anything but easy.
We start, usually in January, start working on our fair. We've already had books printed. We have a fair board meeting every month. And in, probably April, the fair board started discussing what would happen if we had to cancel.
Yeah, our concern is safety first, obviously. Whether or not we could provide the safety for everybody to ensure that we had social distancing. Would we be able to provide the sanitation products that were needed? Would we be able to get those in supply?
Courtney Perry serves as the vice president on the county fair board. She says though talks of canceling were happening back in April, organizers brainstormed ways in which the fair could happen. But ultimately, the decision wasn't theirs to make.
And the county commissioners made that decision for us. At our July meeting, they came and told us that they had made the decision that no activities would be held at the Agriplex, which is where we have the fair.
You know, as everybody, we'd like for the events to happen. and we had a lot of concerns of the safety of everyone out here.
The Pontotoc County Fair is one of the biggest county fairs in the state, and it provides a huge economic boost for the community.
When you talk about the economy of it or the economics of it, we think about, of course, we think about here, my OHC groups have a concession stand. They're going to be out $1,000 this year on one of their fundraisers. 4-H has a huge fundraiser. They do concession stands throughout.
And then we have the carnival that stays pretty busy from the day that we open until we close. That brings a lot of different people from surrounding counties into town, and that brings economic growth in.
While the event is economically important, one of the main purposes for county fairs is to provide communities with a sense of community. And the thought of not having the 104th Pontotoc County Fair is hard to comprehend.
We have a lot of disappointment. I mean, as a fair board member, I've had a lot of parents that have reached out to me and expressed their concern and disappointment.
Especially the kids that show livestock. You know, they already had their livestock at home in place, been feeding them, and the disappointment to not get to show them was big. But I mean, if you get, you know, one child sick or anything was to happen, it would be bad.
I was a little bit upset that they were going to just end it like that. I had wished that I'd get to show this year because I've already purchased my 2 sheep, and then we also have our concession that we always work for 4-H, which we did a major fundraiser this year.
This all seems depressing, but the community decided to rally and turn the bad into something good. Along with other 4-H'ers, Olivia Gaylor did her part in helping her neighbors through the pandemic.
Yeah, for some community service for 4-H, we decided to make like 42 masks and donated it to our community.
We developed a little contest for Fair Week, and it's going to be done on Facebook, and it's COVID can't take our fun away. So every day during the fair, they're going to enter photos of themselves with their fair exhibits, their favorite fair memory.
I just think that like this year will just be like a year that I just need to improve. And so even if we don't get all those shows that we usually do, maybe this is just a year that I just need to really focus on sheep. And so I'll miss it, but I keep it on the high note.
When fair season rolls around next summer, the story might be the same. But either way, this community will do its best to make the 105th County Fair happen. Virtually, or hopefully in person. In Pontotoc County, I'm Curtis Hare.
Haven't seen this in a while. A couple of good weeks of crop prices. Kim, what's going on?
Well, the prices have been good and they've been increasing. Now, you look at wheat prices on the Kansas City December contract, they went from $4.26 to $4.80. That's 54-cent increase there. You look down at corn, $3.21 on that December contract to $3.55. That's 34 cents for corn. Soybeans, $8.65 to $9.55, 90 cents. And cotton, they've been wallowing around about 65, 66 cents, but that's still relatively good for cotton prices.
What about the cash prices in all of those?
Well, you look at cash prices, wheat's up to about $4.35, $4.40 now. That's up from around $3.80. Corn, it's at $3.35 on the cash. That's up from around $3. Milo, $4.24. Milo, you go back a couple months, was lower than corn prices, so that's over $1 increase for the sorghum prices. Soybeans, $8.80. Remember, they were down around $7.80, $7.85 earlier on, and cotton was down at 60 or 62 cents. Or that's where the cash cotton is right now, below that futures price. That's at 65 to 66.
Now, a little earlier, you were talking about the grain prices. Those are a little bit higher than usual. Why are we seeing those higher grain prices?
Well, I don't think there's any one single deal out in the market. I was reading a deal from Top 3 Marketing, Mark Gold. He was saying that right now there's a rumor about La Nina, It says that the U.S. harvest is allowed to be wet. That could delay that and reduce that corn harvest, reduce the quality. You got Brazil and Argentina are dry, and right now they're forecast to remain dry. The world depends on soybeans from Brazil and corn and soybeans from Argentina and Brazil. And then there's just a lot going on in China right now. Chinese corn is there's a shortage of corn right now. They're not producing what they need, and their price is going up. Their wheat prices, they've been importing more wheat, more soybeans than they've imported in the past. So lots going in China. And then you've got COVID. The world is still nervous, and I think even the buyers and the sellers they're holding that product a little closer to their vest. They're building stocks or maintaining stocks. Even in the Black Sea, I think Ukraine and Russia they're not exporting as vigorously as they have in the past.
You used the word nervous back there in your description. Is there a reason to be nervous or cautious of these higher prices?
I think there are. I mean, if you look at wheat, ending stocks, I mean, you're talking world ending stocks, 11.6 billion bushels. That's a record by a long shot. You look at corn, 12.5 billion bushels. The record's 12.6. This is the second high. Soybeans, 3.5 billion bushels. Records 3.1. So high stocks, you look at cotton, 7.6 million bales. The average is 3.94 million. So we've got excess supply of every product. So yeah, I think there's some reason to be nervous with these higher prices.
How should Oklahoma producers benefit from that financially?
If you haven't sold your wheat, I think you need to sell on these rallies. Don't sell all of it, but I would go ahead and pull the trigger. This is the time of year that you need to sell Oklahoma wheat.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Thanks so much for joining us this week for SUNUP. Remember, you can find us anytime online at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and our social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at SUNUP.